So, welcome to the official Stygian channel, which we are getting up and running. Jolene, let's start off with you giving a little bit of an intro to yourself.
Sure, thank you. It's great to be talking with you today, Holly. So a little bit about myself. I am Canadian. I live in Calgary, Alberta, and I'm originally from northern BC, and I've also lived a long time in Ontario. So traveled around a little bit, moved around a bit, and yeah, so I'm in Calgary now and very happy to be part of the anthology.
And we're happy to have you.
Thank you.
So, and you are a writer, but also a YouTuber, which is one of the
Yes.
things that combines us all in this anthology. So, how did you get started with YouTube? And maybe tell us a bit about the content that you create.
Sure. Yeah. I would say that I'm more of a booktuber than I am a writer, but I do, the odd bit of writing here and there kind of thing. So booktube basically because of COVID. So when COVID hit, I was thinking, what am I going to do with my time? I'm going to go buggy, just sitting around and not being able to leave the house. And I thought I was reading a lot, which I did anyway, but I was reading even more than usual. And I thought, I wonder if there's something that I could do. And then I started to go on YouTube and I started learning about other booktubers and thought, oh, I wonder if I could do this. I'd never done a video, had never, used the camera, had never done any of those things. And I thought if I'm going to do something like this would be a really good time because I had all the time in the world.
Hmm.
And I thought I will just, it'll be a learning curve. But if I could figure it all out before I started going to work again, because during the summer I wasn't working, but when I started work again, it was like I'd have to leave. So I thought I would figure out how to, do everything that I needed to do. And if it was something that I enjoyed doing, I would continue to do. And the community is so wonderful. I know we all say this and it sounds like such a cliche, but it's really a great community. And I had no idea when I started, in 2020, that 3 years later I would be friends with people, that I would be part of this anthology, that, so all of these wonderful opportunities came about that. So in my channel, when I first started, I, talked about diverse reading and diverse books, and that's still part of it. But I've kind of narrowed it down even more to be, I read everything, but I talk a lot about Canadian literature or CanLit. Part of it was that I realized there aren't a whole lot of Canadian booktubers. There are some, definitely, and they're fantastic. But not a whole lot of people just talked about Canadian literature to the point that people would be like, oh, I didn't know Canadians had literature.
Well,
So
I
I
know
was
what you
like,
mean for
oh,
sure.
yes. I'm like, we need to change that because we have amazing talent here in Canada. We have some incredible writers. And when I first started, I thought, what could I do as a project, a reading project?
Mm.
And I started off with Mondays with Margaret, and I read all of Margaret Atwood's
Oh, cool.
books throughout a year. And so that kind of got me started and realizing that a lot of people had no idea that she wrote more than, The Handmaid's
The
Tale.
Handmaid's
Meanwhile, she's written so much stuff and so many
so
different
much.
genres and so much. So yeah, so it started kind of with that, and it's just grown because I read a lot of Canadian authors and have learned a lot about Canadian authors because of it. So yeah, it's been a great journey, and I'm so glad I'm still part of it. And yeah, I've been a little lax lately on getting my videos out, but I'll get back to it. Yeah.
I love the Canadian element because I was also a COVID YouTuber. I
Yeah.
It had been something that was playing around in my head for years. I was like, can I do this? I don't know if I can jump into learning all the video editing and everything you need for that, but I really wanted to. And then COVID hit. I'm like, all right, I don't have an excuse here. And there are so many people who are in the US, right? So anytime you come across someone Canadian, it was really exciting for me when I was reaching out and researching all these author tubers and booktubers because I sent hundreds of like not hundreds of emails. I picked through people. I'm like, who, would maybe come up with a really good story for Stygian. So there was that first round. I was a little bit picky with the outreach. But I did send quite a bit of outreach. I was shocked at how many people there were in the first place. And then I just loved finding the Canadians. And like you being in Calgary and Pays from Calgary originally, I, imported him here. And and then I found, Jen, who's in Manitoba, which is my home province. So it's been really interesting making those connections. And I love that you cover CanLit on your channel because it does need more attention for sure.
Yeah, I think so. It's not that long ago that people didn't even know that CanLit, was a thing. And it was actually Margaret Atwood who was like, actually, there are some criteria for CanLit, and here it is.
Yeah.
So I like that whole idea. And it's changing a bit, and it has become so much bigger, but there's so much more that it can be too. So and I love, so I'm doing a challenge right now called Reading Across Canada.
Okay.
And people, yeah, so every month we read from a different province or territory, and people can really, all I want is people to read something from Canada. That's the big goal. And the number of people who have introduced me to new books and new authors, and other people who are just like, I just wanted to try it because I have never read Canadian literature before, or so it's been a really good thing. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm gonna have to look into that more. I'm trying to catch up on everyone's channels now because we've been in the thick of it. I haven't been uploading to mine, and like I need to get back into watching and seeing what everyone's doing because it's also cool.
It is, but
So
it's time consuming, and you're busy.
yeah.
So
Yeah, that is the thing. Like you build up all these people. It's like I love this community and I want to watch everyone, but how am I
yeah.
going to do all of this? So it's
Yes.
you got to make a bit of a schedule, and it would help if YouTube alerts actually did what they're supposed to do, but they tend not to.
Yes.
Like
Right?
I
So it's
want
not
to
just me.
know. I want to know when a video's out so I know when to watch it.
Yes. I thought that was just me. I thought
Oh
they
no,
were supposed
no.
to tell me. And I mean, I do get notifications, but not the way I think I should. I
Well,
don't know.
yeah, like Pay will tell me, he'll go, "Oh, I just got a notification for your new video." I'm like, "Oh, you mean the one I came out with 2 weeks ago?" Like that's not helpful.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
as someone who is more in booktube than authortube, as you
Yeah.
say, when I reached out, what inspired you to submit a story to the Stygian Collection?
So when I first, I saw your video and Pay's video. So when I saw those two videos, I thought, oh, that's interesting, because I was actually just thinking about a story
Hmm.
and had just started kind of putting some pieces together in my head. And I thought, oh, but it's about death, and it's about, like, I'm not really sure that's really what mine is about. Meanwhile, like, my first line is, one by one the husband started dying,
Yeah.
and I'm like, how do I not think this is about death? So yeah, so at first I was like, I'm not really sure, and I was going to use that story for something else. So I kind of at first was like, well, this isn't for me, and I'm not really a writer. So that's what I first thought. But this story I could not get out of my head, and it just like came to me, and like different parts would come to me. And at the time my mom was in the hospital,
Hmm.
and I was at the hospital visiting her, and I started telling her, I'm like, I have this idea for a story, and I think this is what's going to happen. And then I ended up naming one of the characters after her roommate in the hospital. So like I can't get it out of my head, and I said, I think I'm actually going to put it in to the Stygian Society. And so that's when that all changed. And then I was like, hey, I just need to sit down and really write this. I couldn't, if I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I thought, if I can't stop thinking about it, once I write it down, I can kind of let it go a little bit.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I did that, and then kind of sent it off and was like, okay, well, I don't know if I'll ever hear from anybody again, but I was so excited. Mine was in the junk mail.
Yeah.
So
Our
there was a thing.
spam. There's
That's
so
right.
many that's been like the bane of my existence. I send emails. I'm like, are they reaching? Are they reaching everyone? I have no idea. Don't know why it's
So
doing that.
yeah, I was kind of like, well, because I'm not an author, maybe this won't work. And then when I forget who it was, it might have been Jeremy Fee, who said, oh, mine was in the junk mail. And I was like, I'm gonna check mine. And there it was. And I was like, wow, I got accepted. Like, that was so exciting. And yeah, so I was really glad that I did it. And I'm glad that, I put it out there. Because yeah, it was totally rattling around in my head for a long time.
I'm so glad you chose to submit it because there's so much variety in the anthology, but I think yours really stands out as one of those dark comedies because there are
Yeah.
those comedic elements in it. And it's I was saying to Margaret how I like when a short story makes you want to sort of see more of that world. And one of the
Mm.
things I really felt when I was reading yours, and without giving spoilers, I was reading it and I was thinking this would make a great movie. Like I could picture this in film format, in this sort of dark comedic yaya sisterhood and that sort of thing. I could totally see it in that format. So I love it for that reason. Like it's just you can picture it. You can see these characters and it's so dark and it's so entertaining. It's very well done.
Thank you. That's very kind of you to
Welcome.
say. Yeah, I like none of the characters are based on anybody that I know, but there are two things that are true in the story.
Oh.
And yeah, can I tell you? Or is
Yeah.
that giving too much away? Okay.
I don't know.
So
We'll see.
the first is in the first line. One by one, the husband started dying, and I was reflecting on how that has happened in our lives. So what the people that I grew up with, all of the husbands are gone, and it's just the women left. And that's been happening over a number of years. So this didn't happen in any time, and it's not what happens in the book or anything like that.
You're
I don't
not you're not outing someone here.
no. But I started reflecting on that, like who would have thought that, as we were growing up, that all of the men are gone and that it's
Mm.
just these strong women that are left, and what their lives are like, and that kind of thing. So that's the only thing. And then the other line that is true, it talks about a last meal in the book,
Hmm.
and it says that ice cream was the person's last meal, and ice cream was my dad's last meal.
Oh.
And so I put that in there just as a little homage to him, but he's not a character, he's not the person. So it's one of those things where it's like there are some reality things to them, but it's all fiction. So it's kind of neat that you do feel like the characters, that you do feel like you can see it. Yeah, definitely fleshed out. It would be quite a comedy, dark comedy kind of a story.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think it's important to have those personal elements. So that's
yeah,
interesting to hear. Like that always, even if it's not, perfect, like exactly what's happening in the story, once
yeah.
you put that in, it adds so much texture and depth to a piece. So that's interesting to hear. I like that.
Thanks.
So, as a, creator on YouTube,
Mm.
how much writing do you do and how do you balance that with your other work with reading and creating videos?
Yeah, I would say that mostly I do videos and read. That's kind of my thing. I would say I'm more of a reader than anything else. But people say that writers have to read, so that's a good
Yeah.
thing. I've always, like I said, dabbled in writing. So I've done poetry since I was like a little kid. I did little silly stories from when I was a little kid.
Hmm.
I've always had a really crazy imagination, and that has come out in different ways. But um, yeah, and I've had like I don't know. I don't necessarily show my writing to other people, so that's where this was kind of a bigger deal to kind of put something out that other people were actually going to read.
Hmm.
And so for me, I'll get an idea and I'll write it down, and then sometimes it takes shape, and sometimes it sits there for a long, long time, and sometimes it will never be seen again. So right now I'm working on some poetry, and I have submitted some poetry, so we'll see if that goes anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, and I might do some more short stories. The novel seems like too big for me. Like I'm like I don't think I could do it. But
Hmm.
short stories, I like the challenge of trying to get a whole story, make you feel for a character in a short period of time and in a short, couple of pages kind of thing.
It's definitely a
So
skill.
yeah, which I don't think I completely have yet. Like I would love to learn how to do that even better. I like reading short stories to kind of get an idea of how writers write, and I love when they can just grab me, and I love when there's like some kind of gut punch of like didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I look for in a short story when I'm looking at collections.
Hmm.
And yeah, so I kind of there's something about that challenge for me that I really like. So for me, it's not I write. I don't write every day. I read every day. I don't necessarily write every day. It's more like I feel inspired right now. I'm going to write something,
Hmm.
and then I might not come back to it unless, like I said, I'm working on something. So I will keep doing that. Um, yeah, I don't know. Maybe this is something that's going to spark more inspiration for some more. I don't know.
I
So
hope so. I think you should keep
yeah, thanks.
writing. I
Thank
really
you.
do. It's your short story was great and it would
Thank
be
you.
good to see more. I'd love to see more.
Thank you. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
So I know we talked a little bit about your process with this and your thinking. Are there any sort of anecdotes or memorable experiences that were related to the process, like when you were actively writing this piece? Like aside from those, personal moments, did you have any interesting anecdotes you can tell us about the process?
Yeah, let me see. First I had there's four couples in the story. And at first I was going to call it happy marriages,
Hmm.
which would still kind of work.
Mhm. Yeah,
so
yeah.
so I had five couples, and at first I was kind of basing them on people, and then I'm like, I can't really do that because this isn't about those people at all. So I changed that, and then I took out a couple. There's only four couples now. I needed there
Yeah.
to be enough to see how things were going to play out, but the fifth couple seemed to be too many.
Hmm.
And I also felt like I really know who Darlene is, and I really knew who Lydia was, and I really knew who these characters were. But by the time I got to that fifth couple, I really didn't know who they were, and I felt like I was
Mhm.
just adding them to
Just
add
for the
them.
sake of it, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, we need to cut that. We need to get rid of that. So got rid of that, and then yeah. So once the four couples started coming, I kind of changed things a little bit as they were in my head and trying to make it fit. And yeah, I didn't want it to be so long that I had to explain who these people were. I wanted people to kind of know who they were right away. So yeah, so there was that piece, and then what's another anecdote? I guess it's about married couples, and I've never been married. So I had mentioned, like I said to my mom, that I was doing this story, and I said, what are some things that just get on your nerves? What are some things that bug you about this? And my mom's line, and she has a line in the book,
Oh,
is when
awesome.
yeah, she said to me, she goes, put something about their shit stained underwear. So that is in the, and I'm like, okay, not what I was expecting you to
No,
say.
that's like right out there.
Yep. So that is in there.
Well,
Because I
thank
said,
you to
I'm
your
not
mom.
married. Yeah.
Thank you to your mom.
I don't even know if she remembers, but yeah, it was kind of funny because I was like, I'm not married. Tell me some things that I need to add to this. I have these ideas. I told her the ideas I already had, and then she added, and she's like, put something about that. I was like,
Oh,
okay.
I love it. And how's your mom doing now? You said
Yeah,
she's in the hospital. She's
she was in the hospital for 3 months. She's home now. She's doing much better. Yeah, thank you for
oh,
asking.
yes, of course. That's good to
Yeah,
hear.
yeah.
So this has been a community project.
Hmm.
There's been a lot of community involved. There's been a lot of love involved in this, I think, and hearing more about, your family elements and everything here just adds to that. How do you feel about being a part of an anthology that features the works of other YouTube creators, like other people in this community, and what excites you about that collaboration the most?
I loved the whole idea from the very beginning, so that even if I wasn't part of it, even if I hadn't contributed to it in this way as a writer, I definitely still would have contributed in other ways, and I would have wanted to read it. And I
Oh,
thought,
thank
if
you.
I want to read it, maybe other booktubers and YouTubers and author tubers will want to read it. So I love the community aspect of it. I love that a lot of the people who are part of the anthology I did already know through BookTube. Some of them were new to me, so I got to meet new people like online and get to know them
E-meet.
a little bit. E-meet, yes, exactly. And get to know them, checked out their channels, saw what they were all about. So that has been so fun. And just the interactions between people, like people are excited about the project. And you can tell that you and Pei have both put a lot of love and time and effort and just everything into it. And so I felt like this is in good hands. You're going to make good decisions about this because you really cared. It wasn't just yeah, this is a fun project. Let's just do it and get it done. But I felt like it was the project itself was very cared for. So yeah, so from the very beginning, I was like, this is a good idea. Otherwise, yeah, I would have been like, yeah, that's nice. Enjoy, do your thing. But
Well, that's
no, I
that's
really
good to
liked it.
hear.
Yeah, and as I put it out there, like I would, normally my booktube stuff I don't put on my own personal Facebook page or anything like that, but with this I did. And I was like, this is a really cool project. Like people, if you want to get behind something or check this out. And people were excited. So that's just something to me too, when other people who aren't necessarily readers or into YouTube also are interested. So that was cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It has just it's been such a I don't know, there's been so much depth to the project. Like when I set out, I had an idea, like we, between Pei and Pamela, our editor, and like we had this idea of what we wanted it to become. And I feel like it's surpassed that just in the love it's received. And, we have the best possible authors in it and everything. So it's just been, it's been a lot of work, but it's gone exactly how I would have hoped and then some. So it's nice to hear things from our authors and our supporters and everything like that, just to know we're all feeling sort of on the same page.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that your hard work, like you feel it's paid off,
Oh
or
yeah, for sure.
more so. That's a really good thing. Yeah, I think it's been a neat process to be part of too, to kind of see like, oh, this is what's next. Oh, now we're doing this. So I think that's really neat too. Like I feel like I did the easy thing. I just
Oh
submitted a
well,
story,
oh
and
no,
then
I mean you've
you made all the magic happen.
everyone's been promoting, but like we want to make sure that you all felt as included as possible in the whole process, just every step of the way. So I haven't seen that a lot with other collections and other publishers. So we're hoping that sets us apart a little bit in that transparency and that inclusion.
Yeah, and I love anthologies. Like I love, when I'm looking for somebody new, like to read somebody new or somebody different, then I will sometimes pick up an anthology to kind of see like what stories do I like best, or what, with this one, of course, I love them all. But
Yeah.
like it's because there's something about it that I'm a bit biased. And I know the people, like there's something about it. I'm just like, everyone is great. But
Yeah.
when I'm looking for that, I look through and will kind of pick who I like, and then I might look for more of their work, or kind of keep an eye out for them and go, like, this is an interesting voice that I want to hear more from.
Yeah,
So,
it's a really good way to find
mhm.
new writers to read. And I mean, if anyone's watching this interview and they haven't picked up anthologies before, whether, ours or someone else's, like it is a great way to explore new voices. And, when you read something you like, it's just this great sort of tidbit of writing, and then you can look that person up and be like, what else do they have out there? And it's exciting to have that discovery.
Yeah, and it's great that like even like myself, I don't nobody can really go pick up another book by me, but there's a channel, or there's some way of still connecting with that person. So I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what have your hopes and expectations been for the Stygian collection, and how it's received by readers, and how do you think your viewers will respond to it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I was sharing with you earlier that somebody had received a copy, and I was like, "Hey, you have a copy." So it just feels like other people know about it now, and
Oh
other
yeah.
people, so that's pretty exciting. But the person actually didn't know it was even happening until they had
Hmm.
seen me talk about it on my video, and so I thought, and that's. I mean, we're all influencers, right? That's what we're doing when we talk about books and we talk about writing, and I thought, oh wow, like people are really interested in supporting this and want to support it. So I think it's great. I mean, I wanted to do that just as a community project, so I think that part's neat. But yeah, I've received a couple of phone calls already from people who have picked it up, from some family members and stuff
Oh,
who have
that's
picked it
great.
up and said, yeah, like, oh, we read your story. And yep, at first when I put it out there, I was like, just to be sure, like this is fiction. This is not real. None of this is true.
We need to have a disclaimer at the end.
Yes. So there was a part of that where I was like, let's just be honest here that this is not what's going on. Yeah, but I think it's exciting that people are interested, and people, some people didn't know that some of the booktubers who are part of it even wrote.
Hmm.
And I just think it's going to open up a lot of doors for the Stygian Society, like for everybody, like
I hope
it's a
so.
great, it's such a great way to, yeah, to just build community as well. Like
Hmm.
it's not just about this anthology. I think it's more than that. Even though it's just the anthology right now, I think it's going to become much more, and that's exciting to me. So
Yeah, that's definitely our goal. Like when we started out and we were talking about, how we wanted this to go. I don't know if you saw any of the footage from our Montreal launch that we just posted earlier today, where Pamela, my mom, had talked about how she and I together had this idea of, the Bloomsbury Collective, like Virginia Woolf and her sister and all of them. We've always romanticized that idea a lot. And then when we were planning this out and, Pay came along and said, why don't we do like a AuthorTube anthology? I was like, yeah, of course. It's the perfect way to launch this and not just, put a book out with, that's one of ours or someone else's, just to really like give that big extra boost of community. This is what we're all about, and just show everyone that vision in one go. So I hope that comes across.
It does. Very, very well done. I haven't seen the stuff you put out today, but I saw pictures last night.
Yes.
And so I will have to check that out today.
Yeah, you'll have to watch to the end, like after the credits, because there's a little funny snippet in there with Marc-Andre and Pay. I had to
include. Definitely do that. Well, they're both characters, right?
Yes.
So I will
Most
definitely do that.
Yeah.
I wish there were more people in Calgary. I wish there was, or closer by, but that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting how this worked out, like with how many locations we have between all the authors here. It's very cool, but it would be nice if we had like a cluster in each space, because we only have a few cluster locations. Like I know we've got 2 people in Portland, and then there's like the Montreal cluster, and we have 2 people in the Netherlands, and that's our 3 sort of clusters. But aside from that, it's very spotty.
Yes,
but
that's okay. I mean, I love the diversity of it too. So I love that, it is from so many different areas and people. So that's a good thing too. Yeah.
Yeah. You get a lot of different viewpoints. It's very cool.
So
since since you're more booktube than authortube, does the process differ when you're, crafting a video, that sort of creativity to crafting a story? Were there any similarities that you found in the way that you've worked and been inspired, and differences? Like what unique challenges are there in each of them?
That is a fantastic question. I find for booktube, I kind of have my staples, right? So I do my haul videos, I do my wrap up videos, I do those kind of things. I get a little bit more creative with certain things. Like I might do here's my top 10, I don't know, coming of age things or whatever. And I can kind of think that through, but I feel like all the information's there and I just have to talk about it, if that makes sense. So, like, I know you can't see it, but there's like a stack of about 6 books behind my camera here, and it's all the books that I read, so I just need to talk about them and I don't have to think too much, other than, and I'm not a big editor, I don't do a whole lot of editing. Some people are so creative in their editing, and I am not. Like Pay, yes, right, he's so creative, and part of me is like, I love watching it, but I don't have the time to do that.
He sits there tearing his hair out.
Or the creativity. Like, I'm like, I would never think to do something like that. The fact that I show the pictures, that come up here, I'm like, that's about it. That's all you're going to get from me. So I don't put a whole lot of creativity into it that way. I really, and even when I watch, I enjoy that kind of thing, but I really want content. So even if you have all of those things, that's where I love Pay's videos, because not only does he have all of that creativity, but he has content.
He's actually saying something.
Yes. Yeah. Where if there's no content and you're just like trying to put like, I'm not really interested in that, and I won't watch those videos. Where writing is creative, and you're thinking. And for me, it tends to happen in flashes. I'll have an idea and then I'll try and develop that idea. Sometimes it works right away. Sometimes it doesn't come to me for a little while. Or I'll keep thinking about something and, trying to flesh out a character, trying to figure out if a poem is going to rhyme or not, or like those kind of things. Like, what do I really want this to be? And sometimes often, I would say most times, it comes from something I'm never expecting. So I can't pinpoint where, like, I could sit down and go, okay, I'm going to do a video, and I can actually create all of that, film the video, and put it out today if I really wanted to, right? So that does not happen when I'm writing. So I might get a line or two that would work, and the idea is there, but it's a longer process for me for writing, and takes more of the creativity aspect of it. And I mean, I'm always learning, right? So it's sometimes I think it's great, and then sometimes it's not.
Writing is a fickle mistress.
Yes, yes.
Very, very unpredictable and difficult to please, I find.
That's a really
Whereas,
good way of putting it, Holly. Well, and especially because I have an idea and I'm like, that is a brilliant idea. And then like a week later, I'll be like, what was that idea? I don't even remember
yeah.
what that was about. And
I do you have those documents or like note pieces where you'll write something down and then you find it and you're like,
yes,
what? It's just like three words or something that make absolutely no sense a few weeks later.
it's true. And I think it's Stephen King who has said like he doesn't write down notes or whatever because he says if it's going to stick with him, it'll stick with him. And if it's not a good idea, he'll let it go. So sometimes when that happens, which is a lot for me,
Yeah.
I'll be like, I have no idea what this was. It means I have to let it go because, or sometimes I will read it and I'll know kind of what it was. But when I see it with fresh eyes, I'm like, oh, actually, I can use it in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So that has happened as well. It's more rare, but it has happened where I'm like, oh, actually, I like it for this.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, there's just I guess there's just more that sort of randomness with writing and that sort of
Yeah.
creativity, whereas with YouTube, you can very much like when you're crafting a video, you can very much plot it out. It's very
Yeah.
scripted and it's a bit more straightforward. I mean, there's still that creative element for sure, but it is a bit simpler.
Well, and I know there are writers, I'm
Otherwise.
not one of them, who, have everything plotted out and figured out and they kind of know the whole story.
Hmm.
I knew my beginning and I knew my end and I kind of knew a few of the characters, but that was about it. So it was just trying to figure out how do I go from A to B and make it interesting, at least a little bit for someone to, want to read it.
Yeah,
So yeah,
it's an adventure.
it is an adventure.
On that note, are there any other creative endeavors? You mentioned your poetry. Is
Yeah.
there, other stuff that you're working on that you'd like to share with our audience, anyone who might watch this, and the readers of the Stygian Collection?
Well, first of all, thank you for reading if you're reading it. And I would say, yeah, like I said, I submitted some poetry to a publisher, and so I'm just waiting to hear back to see if it's been accepted and where that's going and what's happening. And I'm, like I said, looking at some more short stories. So I don't know exactly where they're going to go and what's going to happen with them, but hopefully something. So yeah,
Awesome.
everything's kind of up in the air.
Okay. And I'm sure everyone will be able to follow that on your, socials and YouTube and stuff, right? You'll keep us up
Yeah.
to date.
Yes. Bookworm Adventure Girl.
Yes. Yeah. So as we wrap this up, it's always important for you to let everyone know where you can be found on the internets.
Yeah. Yeah. So my booktube channel is Bookworm Adventure Girl. My Instagram is Bookworm Adventure Girl. And there's also a Facebook page for Bookworm Adventure Girl as well. So if you put that in, you'll find me, I'm sure.
Excellent. And I'll also link everything down below, as always.
Perfect.
So yeah.
Thanks, Holly.
Yeah, thank you so much for chatting today. And I'm sure when everyone picks up the Stygian collection, they're going to enjoy your story a lot.
Thank you. I hope so.
So I will let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Great. Thanks, you too, Holly. Take
Thanks.
care.